There are women who awaken and there are women who merely brush past. The difference isn't in their hands but in their intention, because a deep man doesn't ignite with empty gestures. He burns when someone dares to discover the places no one else has. Do you want to know why they ignore you? Why they don't desire you like before? It's not your age. It's not your appearance. It's that you don't know how to awaken what truly matters. And as long as you think desire is born only in bed, you'll keep spinning in frustration, invisible. You see, there is a truth few people are willing to accept. The body may crave novelty, but the soul longs to be recognized. A man, no matter how strong he seems, carries unspoken fatigue, hidden disappointments, and scars from battles you never witnessed. He is weighed down not just by work, not just by obligations, but by the silent burden of having to be unshaken in a world that constantly demands his strength. And this is where most women lose him, because they touch him the way everyone else does, in the places already numb, with gestures that echo routine instead of revelation. It's like trying to open a locked safe with a combination that once worked long ago, but the lock has changed, and the old ways no longer matter. If you've ever placed your hand on him and felt nothing shift, no spark, no change in his breath, no subtle shiver running through him, then you've touched only the surface. And surface touches are forgettable. They fall into the noise of every other moment that passes him by. What he longs for, though he will never say it, is a touch that carries presence, a gesture that tells him without words, "I see you. I notice what no one else notices. You are more than a role, more than a duty, more than what the world demands of you." Picture him in a simple moment, standing at the sink, fixing something around the house, typing away at endless emails. He's consumed by the rhythm of routine, his mind miles away. You step close without saying a word and let your hand rest firmly, gently, on the small of his back, not as an invitation to rush into intimacy, not as a playful tease, but as a grounded presence. In that instant, something changes, not because you're seducing him, but because you've reached a place no one else bothers to touch anymore. You've reminded him, even if for just a breath, that he is not invisible. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the hidden side of the self that longs to be acknowledged, even when buried beneath years of silence. That spot on his lower back is more than skin. It is where his armor begins to loosen. It is where the weight of years, decisions, sacrifices, disappointments silently gathers. To touch him there, with intention, is to whisper to his unconscious, "You are seen. You are more than the roles you carry. You are still a man." Do not mistake this for magic. A careless hand will do nothing. A touch without presence will fall flat. What awakens him is not pressure, not seduction, but the energy you carry. Men, especially those who have lived long enough to wear both triumph and defeat, can sense when a woman reaches with emptiness. They can feel when her gestures are demands disguised as affection, but when you touch with genuine stillness, without asking for anything in return, that is when his guard begins to fall. Think back. When was the last time you saw a man tremble from nothing more than a hand at his waist? When was the last time his entire body shifted from a gesture so subtle, so easily overlooked? If you can't remember, it's because that kind of presence has been missing. You've been led to believe that lingerie, games, and words are the keys to keeping desire alive, but those are surface sparks. What reignites the flame is the detail, the pause, the unspoken, "I didn't come to use you, I came to see you." The lower back is the first door. It is not about arousal, it is about recognition. And if you can touch him there with no urgency, no expectation, you will discover that you're not simply touching his body, you are touching his history, his fatigue, his need to be perceived not as a function, but as a human. And that small act of presence can become the seed of a new connection, the kind that reshapes not just the way he looks at you, but the way he feels about himself in your presence. Desire, at its deepest level, does not begin in the flesh, it begins in the soul. And when a man feels that his soul has been reached, everything else begins to follow. This is why women who awaken true desire are rare, because they know that the body is not just skin, but story. And when you dare to touch that story, when you remind him that someone still sees beyond the surface, then desire returns not as a spark that flickers and dies, but as a flame that rebuilds what was thought lost. If you've understood what has been said so far, then you already know. Desire does not live in the obvious. It does not survive in the repetitive motions that everyone else relies on. Desire is reborn when you dare to touch with purpose, when you awaken not only the body but also the memory buried inside it. And that is where the second hidden doorway lies, one that almost no one ever bothers to notice: the inner arm. At first glance, it may seem insignificant. It's not flashy, not the kind of place that gets sung about in songs or written about in novels. Yet it is one of the most sensitive zones in the human body. Neuroscience tells us it is filled with nerve endings that carry sensation like lightning, but that is not what makes it extraordinary. What gives this place its power is memory, emotional memory. Long before he became a man, long before the world demanded he be strong, this part of his body was tied to the simplest gestures of tenderness. A parent's gentle hand, the soft brush of affection that asked for nothing in return. When you place your hand there with quiet presence, you are not seducing him like a restless lover. You are calling forward the archetypes buried in his unconscious. You are telling him, you still deserve to be touched without expectation. Ask yourself, how many times do you think a mature man has been caressed without a demand tied to it? How many times has someone touched him simply to remind him that he is still worthy of affection, still alive, still valuable beyond what he provides? The answer is painful, almost never, because as years pass, touch grows mechanical. It either disappears altogether or it becomes transactional, carrying the silent weight of desire, pressure, or need. The curiosity fades, the exploration dies, and slowly, so does his belief that he is more than a role to be filled. This is what destroys men far more than age or time, the erosion of touch without strings attached. When he is seen only as a provider, a protector, a father, a function never simply as a man, desire withers at the root. And here lies the quiet tragedy. Women believe desire must be rekindled with lingerie, with the right words, with dramatic acts, but desire is not fed by performance. It is fed by presence. A hand resting with intention on the inner arm can whisper more than 1,000 promises. Imagine this. You're sitting together in silence. He is lost in his thoughts, maybe even unaware of his own isolation. Instead of trying to fill the silence with words, you reach out and place your hand on the inside of his arm. Not forcefully, not playfully, but with quiet steadiness. You don't explain, you don't ask. You just remain there. And if you are truly present, if your energy is rooted, something subtle begins to happen. His breath shifts, his posture softens. He begins to feel not aroused, not pressured, but remembered. The Stoics once said, "You cannot control how the world perceives you, but you can control the meaning you place in your smallest acts." That is what this gesture is, a small act that carries weight beyond measure. Touching his inner arm is not about foreplay. It is about restoring a truth he has almost forgotten, that he is not invisible, that tenderness is still possible, that someone can reach him without taking from him. And when that realization seeps in, his eyes begin to change. He sees you differently, not because you have manipulated him, but because you have given back something he thought time had stolen forever, the right to be desired. When you dare to touch where others never think to, you become unforgettable, because you are not following a script. You are not reaching for the same patterns that every woman before you has repeated. You are entering his story through a hidden door, and that is why he responds not with shallow excitement, but with something far deeper. His defenses loosen. His silence turns softer. He lets you closer, not because of what you promise, but because of what you already embody. Do not underestimate the power of the unseen. Just because something is not obvious does not mean it lacks value. The inner arm is a forgotten place, just as many parts of the human soul are forgotten. But when you train yourself to reach what others overlook, you not only awaken him, you awaken yourself. You learn to value the subtleties, to recognize that life is not made of fireworks but of embers, and those embers, when touched with care, can burn hotter and longer than any quick flame. If you want proof, watch his breathing the next time you dare to try this. Notice the way he begins to look at you, not as someone who wants something from him, but as someone who sees him. Notice the way his guard lowers without a word. These are not tricks, they are not techniques, they are reminders of something sacred. That love and desire, when real, are not performed, they are remembered. And when he begins to remember, when his body recalls the tenderness he thought he had lost forever, that is when connection begins. Not conquest, not sex, connection. The kind that reshapes the air between you, the kind that transforms silence into safety, the kind that only a few rare women ever learn how to create. By now you've begun to see the truth. Touch without intention is emptiness, but touch with presence can alter the entire atmosphere around a man. And as we move deeper, the third hidden place reveals itself, one that many women overlook because it is subtle, fragile, and far more intimate than it first appears. The edge of his jaw. Why here? Because this place holds paradox. It is both strength and vulnerability. It is the line that defines his face, the symbol of masculinity and resolve, but also an exposed area near the mouth, the eyes, the throat. To touch him, there is to say without words, I could hurt you, but I choose to protect you. I could dominate, but I choose to honor. That, more than anything, unsettles a man who has grown used to building walls around himself. You must understand, a mature man lives inside a fortress of control. Life has demanded it of him. He has faced disappointments, betrayals, and demands that have forced him to close off parts of himself. Very few people are ever allowed close enough to reach the places where his defenses crumble. But the edge of the jaw is a doorway. It tells him, you don't need to resist me. I am not here to take. I am here to witness. Imagine a quiet moment, perhaps mid-conversation. You don't lean in with rehearsed words or calculated seduction. Instead, you let your hand rise slowly, and with calm intention, you place a fingertip against the side of his jaw. You don't smile. You don't rush. You simply look into his eyes and hold that contact for a few seconds before gently retreating, as though the world had not shifted at all. But it has, because that gesture carries weight. It says, I hold power, but I do not need to wield it against you. It says, you can trust me in your most exposed state. And for a man who has lived long enough to see that trust is rare, this is revolutionary. Most women wait for a perfect moment, the kiss, the embrace, the invitation. But women who truly awaken desire do not wait for moments. They create them. They understand that intimacy is not found in grand gestures, but in the quiet recognition of his humanity. This is not technique. It is declaration. It is not manipulation. It is truth, because in that moment, you are not proving your charm. You are reminding him of his ability to surrender without fear. You are telling him that he is not just a provider, not just a shield, not just a silent presence in the world. He is still a man who can be touched with reverence, not expectation. When Jung wrote of the human shadow, he spoke of the parts of ourselves we hide out of fear, the places we guard because they make us vulnerable. The jawline is one such symbol. To touch him there is to say, I see your shadow, and I do not fear it. And that opens a door deeper than desire. It opens the possibility of trust. Most women fail here because they rush. They believe touch must lead somewhere quickly. They let impatience ruin presence. But the jawline demands stillness. It demands time. To linger there is to show that you are not afraid of silence, not afraid of closeness without a script, and that stillness is what transforms a man. Think of it like this. Words can be doubted, promises can be broken, appearances can be deceiving, but the body knows the truth of energy. When your hand rests with quiet steadiness against his jaw, he feels what no sentence could deliver. You are not here to take, you are here to see. And in a world where he has been treated as a function, as a resource, as a pillar, That kind of recognition is rare enough to shake him. The consequence of ignoring this is predictable. He hardens, he withdraws, he gives himself only in fragments, and you feel that distance, that silence, that absence you can't seem to cross. But the reward of daring to reach his jaw with presence is equally predictable. His gaze changes, his breath deepens. He begins to lean in, not because you demanded it, but because he feels safe enough to offer it. Do not mistake safety for weakness. In truth, it is the strongest foundation of desire. Any spark built on pressure or performance will fade. But desire born from trust, from surrender without fear, will endure. It will transform not just the way he responds to you, but the way he inhabits himself when he is with you. And here is the deeper secret. When you create such a moment, you are also teaching yourself. You are learning the discipline of presence, the strength of patience, the beauty of silence. You are training your own soul to connect without hunger, to love without grasping, and in doing so, you become the kind of woman who does not merely awaken desire, but awakens reverence. That is why the jaw matters. Not because of physical sensitivity alone, but because it represents surrender. A man who allows himself to be touched there without pulling back is a man who is, even if only for a moment, choosing to trust again, and trust is the soil where real desire takes root. If you've followed this far, then you already understand the body is not just flesh. It is a map, a story, a container of memory and meaning. And if you dare to explore beyond the obvious, you begin to see that true desire isn't about tricks or surface gestures. It is about entering the places no one else has dared to reach. That's why the fourth hidden doorway matters so much, because it lies in a place almost everyone forgets, behind the knees. At first, it may seem strange, almost laughable. What could possibly matter in such an overlooked place? But that is exactly the point. This area is a perfect metaphor for what gets abandoned in relationships. The unseen, the unspoken, the details no one considers worth touching. And yet, it is here where sensitivity lingers. It is here where he can be reminded that not all of him has been forgotten. Think of how many years he has lived being touched only in predictable ways, only in places already expected. His body, like his soul, grows numb when the same gestures are repeated without meaning. But when your hand finds that hidden place, when you linger behind his knees with presence and curiosity, you send him a message that shatters routine. You tell him, I am not here only for what is easy. I care even about the parts you forgot about yourself. This is not about eroticism. It is about revelation. Jung called it the encounter with the shadow, the parts of the self that are hidden, neglected, even rejected. When you touch behind his knees, you awaken not just sensation, but memory. You remind him that vulnerability exists even where he thought it irrelevant. And for a man who has grown accustomed to being unseen in the deepest ways, that reminder is priceless. Most women fail because they stay at the surface. They polish their appearance, they learn lines, they play roles, but they never dare to reach where silence lives. They avoid what is uncomfortable, what is uncertain, what is hidden, and so they become forgettable. But the woman who sees the invisible, who values the overlooked, becomes unforgettable because she is not performing, she is perceiving. And then, beyond all of these hidden places, lies the final one, the one that transcends the body itself, the scalp. It might sound simple, like running your fingers through his hair, but that is not what this is. The scalp is where thought lives, where tension gathers, where doubts accumulate. To touch him there with true presence is to say, I don't just want your body, I want your mind. I am willing to hold the weight of your inner world with care. But be warned, this is not easy. Done poorly, it feels invasive, awkward, even childish. Done with depth, however, it becomes sacred, because the scalp is the crown of trust. Touching him there is touching the part of him most burdened by thought, by responsibility, by the constant weight of being in control. And if you can place your hand there, not as a demand, not as a test, but as presence, you awaken in him something almost extinct, the the desire to trust again. Most women cannot bear the silence this requires. They touch, they wait for a reaction, they look for validation, and when it does not come quickly, they grow restless, they pull away. They think they've failed. But desire does not bloom under pressure, it grows in patience. Touching his scalp is not about arousal. It is about letting him know that you can hold him without asking for anything in return, that you can be there, even in silence, that you are not afraid of the stillness where trust is born. Biology confirms this. Such a touch releases oxytocin, the hormone of trust and bonding. But more than hormones, it awakens his spirit. It tells him, "You are safe with me. I see the man beyond the armor, beyond the duties, beyond the silence." And when a man feels that, everything shifts. His body relaxes, his eyes soften, his entire being leans into the presence of someone who truly sees him. This is where the journey ends, and where it begins again. Because by now you realize that none of this has ever been about technique. It is about intention. It is not about tricking a man into desire. It is about daring to awaken what has been deadened by years of neglect. His belief that he is worthy of being touched not for what he provides, but for who he is. And here is the deepest truth. When you learn to touch a man this way, you are also learning to touch your own life this way, to stop overlooking what is hidden, to stop rushing past what seems insignificant, to pause, to notice, to awaken, because what you give to him, you are also teaching yourself. Most people live their lives superficially, brushing past the depth, ignoring the silence, rushing into distraction. They never dare to touch what matters, in themselves or in others. That is why desire fades, why connection dies, why people grow numb. But you, if you've listened this far, you are not like most. You are ready to awaken, not just him, but yourself. So the choice is before you. Continue living on the surface, repeating the same patterns, feeling invisible even in closeness. Or dare to touch where no one else has touched, to awaken what he and you thought was lost. Because once you see this truth, you cannot unsee it. Once you know what lies beneath the surface, you cannot return to living shallow. And when you dare to touch with presence, with patience, with soul, you will discover that desire is not fragile, it is eternal. It does not wither with age nor fade with time. It lives in the hidden places, waiting for someone brave enough to awaken it. So the next time you stand beside him, do not reach for the obvious. Do not demand, do not perform. Simply place your hand where silence lives. His back, his arm, his jaw, his knees, his scalp. Touch not to take, but to see. And in that moment, you will feel it, his guard falling, his soul stirring, his desire awakening. Not from flesh alone, but from the deepest part of him, the part that longs to be remembered. And when that happens, understand this. You are not just touching a man, you are touching his essence. You are awakening not just his desire, but his trust, his dignity, his presence. And that is the kind of connection that never dies. And now you know the truth about desire was never about techniques, appearances, or games. It has always lived in the hidden places, waiting for someone brave enough to reach them with presence instead of pressure, with reverence instead of hunger. If you dare to touch a man not for what he gives, but for who he is, you will awaken something no one else has ever reached. And when that moment comes, you will understand you were never just learning how to awaken him, you were learning how to awaken yourself. This is not about seduction. This is about power, dignity, and connection that transcends time. And if those words stirred something deep inside you, then you already know you are ready to walk differently through love, through desire, through life itself. Subscribe to HeartSync X now, not for entertainment, but for awakening. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because true wisdom is not meant to be kept, it is meant to be lived.